to go along with those who gather corpses. In Maryland, Randy and I were studying cinema. For a long time, we had wanted to shoot a ride, along with corpse collectors, and 2 years ago we finally had the opportunity. Our point of contact was Ben, a mortuary assistant who played computer science and had been with us since elementary school but had not followed us to college. He and his buddy Sam took bodies and limbs connected to a metro area coroner. These were the guidelines that Randy and I had to abide by while riding along. Avoid responding to inquiries from bystanders. Don't record the eyes of the deceased. The sticker with the corpse collector's emblem should not be removed. Rules 2 and 3 were not completely understood by us. Randy and I saw a lot of graphic pictures of crime scenes with the eyes plainly visible, yet we decided to abide with the guidelines. At their first visit, a freshly captured serial killer dropped an unlive weapon into a tiny, filthy canal, which Ben and his colleague Sam had to jump into to collect. At their second trip, Ben and Sam had to search a home's kitchen floor for a homeowner's finger after he and his wife got into a knife fight over a TV remote. It was obvious to me that Randy was becoming bored. Everything went awry at the third stop of the evening. We were far out in the suburbs. There was something odd in the air. There was no breeze and no bug noise. There was the sound of a dog howling in the distance. As we were making our way to the area, a police vehicle drove by. A police officer rolled out his window and gestured to a playground located behind a row of condos via a little lane. "Your dead corpse walked that way," he said. We were all four unsure of what he meant. There was a group of people gathering around the playground when we arrived. Randy and I did our best to act as if we were with Ben and Sam as they persevered. Then we saw him, an elderly guy with a hidden cleaver in his skull. It seemed as if he was still roaming about in ignorance of his death. He continued to drive others away from him, for someone who was already dead. His strength was astonishing. A big guy was pushed to the ground by him. "Where are you going?" A lady in the throng kept shouting, "Please give up." At last, the guy with the cleaver in his skull sat down on a bench. That was, one of the bystanders said, where he fed the ducks every night. I was so startled by what I saw that I failed to see Randy go by me. Randy walked straight up to the elderly guy and began recording, breaking the second rule. The guy avoided turning to face the camera. The elderly guy eventually sagged to the ground and died as Randy shifted about him in an attempt to acquire a new perspective. Upon returning to the vehicle with me, Randy excitedly played back the uncut video he had captured with his DSLR. When we finally arrived to the elderly man's clip, we saw him gazing at us straight into the camera. My heart missed a beat from shock. Randy was close to dropping the camera. We exchanged glances with one another. Our faces lost all blood. We didn't inform Ben and Sam what occurred after we left the scene. In the middle of nowhere, at a traffic signal, a group of dogs materialized behind us and began barking at our vehicle. Ben and Sam exchanged puzzled looks with the dogs. When Sam glanced in the rear-view mirror, he began to panic. After getting out of the vehicle, Sam unlocked the passenger door and pulled Randy outside by the collar of his shirt. We didn't know what was going on. Ben and I also left. Ben saw Sam show Randy his sticker. The corpse collector insignia on Randy's sticker was flipped. Randy and I applied the sticker correctly thanks to Sam and Ben's assistance. Before allowing us to board their vehicle, they even gave us another look. It has to be intentional for it to be upside down. Randy purposefully broke rule number 3. It turned out that the ancient sign included in the corpse collector emblem is not new. Evil spirits might be warded off by the emblem. It covered their vehicle in it. It covered their whole outfit. Sam had threatened to abandon Randy in the midst of a nighttime wooded road. Randy began to apologize a lot. He acknowledged that the night had been so dull up to that point that he turned it upside down to see what would happen. Sam shouted that we were now tagged and that the upside-down sign is an invitation. Ben is trying to calm him down, but all Randy and I can do is stare at the dogs. The dogs had stopped barking. Beside us, they were staring into the field. That's when we first noticed them. A line of fair individuals, some clad in robes of white. others nude. They seemed to be about 7 and 8 feet tall. Although they were far away, they marched slowly in our direction. I was astonished to find the cleaved old guy gripping onto the cargo bed side like a side pillow when I turned to get back in the vehicle. He did not move, but he smiled, something he had not done before. My spirit felt as it left my body. I wanted so much to simply fall to the ground and cry. I looked at Sam and Ben to see how they were responding. Ben let out a sigh, pushed the elderly man's corpse farther into the bag, and closed it all the way. At last, Sam let Randy get back into the vehicle, but he informed him that they would drop him off at the door. The pale folks in the road drew my attention, and I couldn't help but notice how much closer they seemed to us now. It was obvious up close that not one of them had eyes. Sam answered a phone just as he was about to leave. Ben and Sam were instructed by the dispatcher to proceed to a neighboring school where a gun-wielding, inebriated guy had climbed a flagpole and demanded to see his ex-wife, but Ben radioed in to say Randy was marked by bad spirits, so they had to take a detour and drop him off at the dorm first. I was certain the dispatcher would lose his or her cool. However, Ben was just advised to exercise caution and avoid having his mark transferred to him by the dispatcher. I was astounded by how nonchalantly they discussed this. Randy remained silent. Ben and Sam drove them back to the dorm even though he knew they didn't have to. Randy gained courage once we were on the route that led directly to our dorm. He inquired as to what being marked meant and if he could take any further action. Randy received a sticker from Ben that had the emblem of the corpse collector. Ben instructed Randy to attach the sticker on his dorm room door and refrain from opening it for anybody. The sound of the dog wailing startled Randy, and he began to weep. Sam and Ben remained unimpressed. Randy became enraged and said that he had heard the dispatcher, that he was able to give others the mark. Believing that this was the way things worked, he began to massage the vehicle. Randy yelled at us as Sam shook his head and sped off. To last, we arrived to the coroner's office. I waited outside while Ben and Sam transported the elderly man's corpse to the coroner. Then Randy started sending me texts on my phone. He said that there were suddenly several individuals standing atop the partially completed, abandoned building across from our hostel and peering directly into the window of his dorm room. I started to text something back, but was interrupted by a slap on the back from Ben and Sam's supervisor, the dispatcher, who had granted us permission to go along. He inquired whether I had any decent video and how the night was going so far. I gave him a nod and grabbed my camera, intending to show him some film. When I discovered that every one of the more than 100 video clips had 0 bytes of memory, my heart fell. Each thumbnail featured the same image. An elderly guy with a split face staring straight at the camera.